Hello to everybody from Galway, where we're having a cyber attack, so I'm slightly anxious about this presentation, that it goes okay and that the Wi-Fi holds up. I'm just going to do a quick run through of a document that we developed with national impact, which is giving an overview of priority areas for the implementation of simulation on clinical sites. And it's not that exciting, I have to say, because it's not saying much different to what other people know about this, and we have referenced international standards. But it's quite interesting, I think, to hear our story, and it fits very nicely with the theme of this conference, which is about, you know, the next steps after the pandemic, and I think our story aligns very well with that. So just by way of background, COVID-19 gave a lot of opportunities to us in the simulation space, and driven largely by a group that are our chief academic officers, who are a group who sit between the HSE and undergraduate education, and their role is to link the two together. They have a focus on education and a little bit on research and innovation. And between them and myself, we secured some funding from the National Chief Clinical Officer, who's Dr. Colm Henry, and that funding went to each of the hospital groups. And it was in response to the impact that the pandemic was having on learning on clinical sites and on trainees. When he gave the money, and it was a substantial amount of money, he did request that there would be some joined up thinking and a national strategic approach would be put in place as to how this money was spent and to how we would move forward. And from that, the strategic guide was commissioned, and it was funded by our National Doctors Training and Planning Group, who fund education within the HSE. So my involvement in it is that I was involved in the initial approach to Colm Henry, and the CELTA group and NUI Galway had already developed a strategy around this, and so it sort of made sense that we would use that knowledge and what we knew about simulation in general to try and develop some sort of a guide. And we've established the Irish Centre for Applied Patient Safety and Simulation, which is on a clinical site, and that was established in 2017 after a lot of pushing and shoving, and it's a collaborative group and centre across all disciplines and across undergraduate and postgraduate medical education. And I guess it's reasonably unique in Ireland in that it's on a clinical site. Personally, I have over 20 years of experience, and 10 of those are in what I would call the business of sim and trying to get these things over the line. What we deliver is interprofessional across undergraduate and postgraduate groups. We have embedded patient safety research to within our activities, and 50% of what we do is patient safety and simulation research. Over the years, we've got very good buy-in from management, so we've learned a lot along the way. And I have to say that the journey to get from where we started to where we are now was particularly unpleasant. And so I think that what I've learned is probably of use, and I hope people do find it useful. So this is us in 2015, and I kind of like this picture because there's so many errors in it that, you know, you could nearly play a game with it. But this is how we were operating on a clinical site, but in a very small space, and just doing the best we could. And now in 2021. This is where we are. We have a split site. The one on the left is on the hospital site. It's over 1,000 square meters of flexible simulation space. And the one on the right is on the university site. And the university site is next door to the hospital. And it's a specific clinical skills facility, which is about 1,000 square meters as well. So the purpose of the guide was really, it is supposed to be useful. As opposed to just a reference, and it's to bring people along. And what we discovered interviewing various stakeholders is that while there was a lot of expertise in Ireland in simulation, it was very limited to in situ simulation and to areas where simulation is accepted as part of training, such as anaesthetics, PEDS and ED. And it didn't really go beyond that. And we were quite unique in having this interprofessional approach and spanning undergraduate and postgraduate. So the purpose is really to make recommendations for both hospital groups to develop something similar, and their hospital groups are similar to trusts in the UK, and for the HSE to take things to the next step. And the whole guide is written around promoting interprofessional education and team working for patient safety. There's a couple of themes in it, which are talking about engagement, which is a very important part of sustainability, the quality of your programs, focusing your developments around needs and generating outcomes, collaboration and sharing of resources, and standardizing processes, even down to job descriptions and salary scales. And what we wanted to do with this was to answer Colm Henry's call to show some strategy and to secure funding going forward. But really we wanted to put simulation to the very front and centre, like the Queen, in the health service. So the guide is divided into part 1 and part 2, and I'm just going to speak briefly about part 1 today, which identifies priority areas, which again are very similar to what's known internationally. Part 2 is how to write a strategy, and that's supposed to support other hospital groups to write their strategy. So the priority areas that were identified, there are 8 of them, and we used various international and national standards to develop these and input from stakeholders. And I'm just going to talk about the ones that are important and show you what we're doing in these spaces. So number 1 is governance, and in my head this is the business of SIM. I have very little role in SIM education anymore. A lot of what I do is just business, and it's finding money, getting people hired, ensuring quality, setting standards, and achieving standards. So the recommendations in this priority area are to appoint a director or a lead and to develop a strategy, and that's where part 2 of the guide comes in. Setting up a steering group and establishing mission, visions and values are very important, and you can align those values to whatever organisation you sit within, be it university or NHS or HSE. The ICAPS group's mission is to improve patient safety and the quality of care through research and its application in practice. Our vision statement is to transform the delivery of healthcare through evidence-based quality improvement in education. And that's just a screenshot of our website. And we operate in line with values from our university. And those values are respect, openness, excellence in education and research, and sustainability. So it's important to align what you're doing from the governance perspective to the people who are funding you and to the people who are supporting you. Number 4, I probably should have made this number 2 because it's really important, is the personnel and the faculty development, a key priority area. And while there are lots of places that are doing various courses and simulation and training, it's much more granular than that. So it's coming down to developing job descriptions, which is something that has to be taken on nationally. In Ireland, there is no job description for a simulation technician, for example, or for a director of simulation, or for a centre manager. So those things need to be addressed centrally. Protected time is something, again, that has to be addressed centrally and nationally, and that's around faculty who cannot support your activities unless it's written into their contract that they have protected time, and that's something that has to be addressed nationally. Education of your faculty and your SIM staff in key areas such as psychological safety, debriefing, qualifications and credentials, running courses, sharing materials. We've established the Irish Association for Simulation. I'm a co-founder, and that's a collaborative group whose role is to spread simulation across the country and link with international groups. We have a diploma and a master's in healthcare simulation, and actually we train a lot of our own faculty through that mechanism. And we've established a journal club or sim club and are working on a meta debrief club. So all of these things are designed to make sure that your staff are well developed and are up to date. These are some screenshots of our postgraduate programs on the top right, and the bottom right are some of our staff. And what's interesting about this is that they span all sorts of disciplines, from nursing, medical science backgrounds, paramedics, technology, and so their needs are often very different. While they have development needs in the simulation space, they also have development needs in their own profession and in the CPD territory of whatever specialty they come from. Priority area 5 is about program improvement. So we talk about developing programs to a standard, but you need to ensure that they are evaluated and that you're measuring the quality of those programs. And you can use standards and generate reports to ensure that. We all know that there's facilitator evaluation tools such as DASH and OSAD. And in terms of when it comes to securing funding, particularly from the HSE, they will want some assurances that what we are delivering achieves a certain standard. So accreditation with various bodies is something that each centre should be working towards. And you can have your people or your programmes or your site accredited with ASPE, SESAM or SSH. And the standards developed by an Axel are very useful when you're trying to achieve targets. So we use all of those, and we have accredited staff across all of those societies. But we also have an internal quality assurance process, which is around feedback forms, and then evaluating your feedback forms and making improvements based on those. Priority areas 6 and 7 are around integrity and promoting simulation. We work to the values and code of ethics from the SSH with a focus on psychological safety in learning. And we work very hard to build, maintain, and on the occasion that we do damage our psychological safety, we have mechanisms to repair it. Here's a screenshot of that code of ethics from SSH on the right. They align very nicely with our values within the university. They're integrity, transparency, mutual respect, professionalism, accountability, and results orientated. And the image on the left is that our translation of that to Irish, which was done here in the university, and that's what we use, because in this university everything is translated into Irish. Priority area 8 is around collaboration, and this conference is a good example of that. And collaboration locally at undergraduate and postgraduate levels is important, and that can be tricky to do. And it goes back to governance and having a director that has enough clout to sit in both of those spaces and to get things done. Collaboration across disciplines is the interprofessional piece, and then working beyond education and training in your simulation facility. And this is something that kind of comes after you've established your education and training. So research, working with medical device companies. In Galway, we're in a medical device and a tech hub and industry. And a big one is community. And how can what you do support your community better? And collaboration nationally and internationally, so setting up societies. Again, a screenshot from our own website that just shows our research areas in education and who our collaborators are. So just coming towards the end, what happens next? Really, the document and the priorities areas are the first stage. And it's very similar to how things have developed in the UK. We're a bit less further along, but it's just around getting our ducks in a row and doing things to a standard and collaborating. But there is a phase 2, which is to secure further investment. And once we launch the official strategy, we hope, and everybody can get their simulation facilities off the ground on clinical sites, we will move to the next phase, which is this. It's fitting simulation into the overall transformation and innovation plans for healthcare. And in the UK, the NHS Health Education England document, which was published in November 2022, talks about how you do that and how you align simulation and immersive technology activities with the transformative plans of your healthcare providers. And you can see on this slide in the bold font, I'm aligning activities in the simulation facility with key priorities areas in the HSE, such as the patient safety strategy, the framework for improving quality, our medical council standards for accreditation, and Sláinte Care, which is about community care. So just looking back to the UK again, who have significant expertise in this area and are significantly further along, their initial document really identified those 5 principles, which are around the outside, are the 6 principles, and they align very closely with what the National Strategic Guide document we have developed. And this is where they are with their more recent 2020 document. And I love this screenshot because it shows simulation sitting there right bang in the middle, and all of the things that it feeds into and all of the outcomes that it supports. And yes, education and training is there, but a lot of systems and work design and well-being is involved. So I want to briefly address some elephants in the room that when we're talking about simulation on clinical sites come up. We're talking about centre-based simulation largely, but that centre can be virtual, and you could have pockets of in situ simulation that are supported by a team but are still achieving the same standards. And there is a little bit of tension between centre-based and in situ simulation traditionally, but I think that's changing, and they both have slightly different focuses. And we now look at this as a sort of a diagnostic and therapeutic approach. So you might be running an in situ sim for your team, and to look at how the team works in the environment and within that system. And you might pick up things that need further addressing and would be better done in a centre. And so it's this diagnosing something in the in situ sim, and then maybe taking it for the therapy to the centre-based sim, where you have more time and can do a more focused debrief. The other elephant, I guess, is, are we suggesting that every single hospital should have an enormous simulation centre? And no, that's not the case. The plan is to use a hub and spoke model around the level 4 hospitals, where there will be a hub, and there will be different capabilities within the smaller hospitals, and very specialist capabilities and expertise will remain within the training bodies. So this is about true collaboration. So just to finish up, here's a lovely picture of Galway taken recently at Christmas. That's Brown Thomas with all the lights, and it's a picture that's taken by somebody who works in the university who's a photographer. So I want to say thank you and happy Christmas to everybody, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Clinical simulation manager, or you don't have anything in Ireland. I'm just really, it's quite shocking to see how, like you say, I don't want to be disrespectful, but how behind you are over there in Ireland. That you don't get that protection and purpose job description, So how is that looking nationally then? Is there work being done on that at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite shocking. And, having said that, there's huge simulation activities on clinical sites and within postgraduate training bodies. But there are no job descriptions, even for technicians within our health service or managers. And that's a real rate limiting step that I think people didn't think about. And so that is one of the guide that's written makes recommendations for the HSE, which is our NHS, areas where they have to prioritise. And then for clinical sites there's recommendations for areas where they would prioritise. So the document has gone back to the HSE, and the plan is that if an advisory group can be set up nationally, that they can support these developments. But you're right, it is quite shocking. I mean, we are probably significantly behind in terms of our commitment to education, particularly within the health system. And we have a very fractured approach to service delivery and education. We still have them separate. And I think what we're trying to do with simulation is to bring those together more. And these pieces that you've spoken about are key to doing that. So yeah, it's kind of a big challenge ahead, but bring it on.
Well, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to you too.
There's a lot of thank youing going on in the room that you probably can't hear.
Okay, thank you.